I'm really excited to be here. This is a topic that I've been enthralled with since I was first introduced to it. Goodness, 20-some years ago. And if I have time, I'll share the actual kind of epiphany experience that I had that really crystallized this. Even though I didn't know the word mindfulness itself, it wasn't something that people were studying very much, but nevertheless, I had this experience, and it changed virtually everything for me. And so I'm excited to share what I have with you. I hope we can get it in. Usually this presentation that I've created lasts a little bit longer than an hour, but I'll try to be quick because I don't want to, nobody wants to go over time. So let me start with this story. So I was teaching a class at school, and it was before the class started, and I was just kind of getting ready for the class, and there was a guy who came in. His name was Philip. Do I have him? Yeah, Philip. He came into the classroom. He was one of our health promotion majors, and he sat down over here, and he was just stressed as could be. It looked like his brain was going to explode for how stressed he was. He's a non-traditional student, so he had a wife. I don't remember if he had any kids at the time, but I looked over at him as I was getting ready, and I said, he was kind of right here to me, and I said, "Hi, Philip," and he said, "How you doing, Doc?" He always called me Doc for some reason. He says, "How you doing, Doc?" And I said, "I'm good. How are you?" And he says, "Oh, you really want to know?" And I said, and I had had a lot of conversations with Philip before, and so he felt fairly comfortable with talking with me. And he said, and I looked at, and he was just sitting there eating yogurt, but he'd brought some yogurt with him. And he said, "You have no idea how stressed out I am." I said, "Really? Tell me a little bit about it. What's going on?" And he said, "Well, I have 3 tests in the next week. I have two or three, I don't remember the number, papers, big papers, due in the next week or two. And I have, I haven't started on any of those. He says, I've got a little bit of relationship problems with my wife. And this guy who I work for, he was, in his career, in his job, he flipped houses. So he would restore beat down houses and try to resell them. And he had a partner, and he said that his partner was suing him for some frivolous thing that he shouldn't be suing him for. And I said, "Wow, that sounds like you've got a lot going on." It was pretty obvious. And he said, "Yeah, I know. What should I do? I mean, what do you think I should do?" And I said, "Do you really want to know what I think you should do?" He said, "Yeah, tell me, what should I do? Because this is just killing me." And I looked at him and I said, "I think you should enjoy your yogurt." And he gave me this blank stare like, what are you talking about? Well, that's the right answer. And by the time we're done today, you will understand why that's the right answer. Now, when you hear the word mindfulness, it's kind of one of those words like wellness. There's a lot of different interpretations of what mindfulness is. When you hear the word mindfulness, what comes to mind? Why are we having a conversation about mindfulness in the first place? Nobody knows.
majority, I would think, getting our thoughts or our stuff in order in our mind, so we don't have it going around like this all the time. That's what I mean, that's how I relate it now, but I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know how you can stop this. I mean, I've been meditating for 30 years and my mind still feels like this. But there's a different approach.
Yeah, I'm also thinking about how there's also a lot of focus on multitasking. You know, you should be able to do more than one thing at a time, and especially for me as a nurse, when I was working on the floors, I would walk into a patient's room with a certain thing in mind. They would need something, so I'd go to do it, and on the way, I would be told 3 or 4 other things I needed to do. And so all of these things, I'm supposed to be multitasking all of these things and not get confused and not mix up medicines and make sure I do the most important thing first. And when you're always accosted by something different all the time, it's hard to put your best efforts at any one thing. And I think with mindfulness, what you're doing is focusing your time not at multitasking, but so you do full focus at whatever it is you're doing, so that you do it well.
Yeah, there's tons of evidence that multitasking is less effective than doing one thing at a time by about what do you call it, an exponent of 4. I mean, it's really gets in the way of really getting things done one thing at a time. Let me just give you a few things that I know, or at least I believe about the mind. Because who was talking about my mind's going like this. Well, there's a few things that are true about the mind. The first thing that we know about the mind is the conscious mind, the left brain part of our mind, can only focus on one thing at a time. It can only focus directly. That's different than, like, I'm in this room and I can see 7,000 things, right? As I go like this, oh, there's 7,000 things that I could, but I can only put my attention on one single thing. How can we prove that? What's our proof of that, our easy proof? You who are in the health department, you focus on this all the time. What is now, at least in my observations, what's now more dangerous than drinking and driving? Texting and driving. I don't know if I would say more dangerous. They're both horrible things. But why is it that we don't like people texting and driving? What did you say?
They can't focus on both.
You can't, right? You can't read something and watch TV and know that the football game's happening and be able to read that paragraph. You can see both things, but you can't focus on it. Okay, got that? We good with that? Second thing, we are able to think anything we want. Now this might seem like, well, of course this is the case. But when we get into the whole, I'm so stressed about things, we have to recognize that it's because of how we're thinking every time, except for sometimes. Not very often. But we can think, like if I said to you, okay, think of Saturn and put a purple striped elephant dancing on the rings, right? You could go there in your imagination, but you could also just as easily say, no, I don't want purple, I want orange. And I don't want stripes, I want polka dots. And you could think that. There's nobody in your head. Or you could say, I'm not thinking of Saturn at all. I want to go to Australia and think about the... It's up to you. You have a choice about what you think all the time. Now, we've heard this 1,000 times, but it's important if we want to really understand mindfulness. Okay, so you can only think of one thing, and you can think of anything. All right? Now, the third thing that we know for sure is you can only directly experience what's happening right here and now. Now, I want you to just think about that for a second. Directly experience what's happening right here and now. How do you prove that? What's our proof? You sound pretty sure. How can you be so sure? I can experience all kinds of things that aren't here and now. How do we prove that?
What do you mean by directly experience? How do you define that?
Okay, well, actually, I'm going to jump forward a little bit, and we'll come back to this, and we'll answer your question. Okay. All right. The next thing about the mind is this principle of attrition. And I'm not going to spend too much time on this one. The principle of attrition says what you aren't thinking about, and the less you think about something, the less it has an effect on you. Think about a recent argument you had with somebody. You guys probably don't argue with somebody. Think of the last time you got angry at somebody. You chose anger. As you thought about it and thought about it and thought about it, you probably noticed, man, I'm getting a little tense. But as you stopped thinking about it, as your thoughts stopped thinking about it, it ceased to have an effect on you. Yes? Does that make sense? I mean, this is common sense, but we often think, well, I can't help that this is happening, or I can't help that. If we're not thinking about, say, the earthquake in Mexico, then the sadness about that experience doesn't happen with us. As soon as we start thinking about it, then, oh man, all these people are killing, all these horrible things, or Puerto Rico, or, I mean, you name it, it's happening. But if you don't think about those things, it ceases to have an effect on you. Okay, principle of attrition, that's kind of a cool thing. Now, here's the truth that I know about stress. And it's moving in the direction of your question. Stress only happens to us, well, at least 99.9% of the time, when we send our mind into the future, or we send it into the past, and we make up pain in those thoughts about the future and the past. Does this have a? This doesn't have a. The back button. Oh man, there. Okay, so anyway, that's okay. That's all right. It might not.
I think it's that one. Nope. That's. Where did we come?
Now you're.
Too far ahead. I should be going back.
Okay, that's okay. No worries, no worries.
Okay, there should be one on here, I thought, but
It's okay. This will still, yeah. So, here's the thing that I want you to think about. When I did that presentation, gosh, it was snowing when I came. We talked about stress, and I said that the only reason for all of your stress is the threat thought that you attach to events. If you don't have a threat thought, you will not have stress. And a threat thought is any kind of thought that you have that sounds like uh-oh, or oh geez, or oh no, or right? Resist. If you don't have that thought, you're not going to turn on. That's the thought that activates the autonomic nervous system, the hormones, to turn on the fight or flight response every time. There is no exception to that. 99% of those thoughts that we have that we add a threat to involve either a future event or a past event. And if you analyze your situation accurately, that's the truth. You're going to be... somebody give me an example of a stressor, a so-called stressor. Anything that's, when you think of this, you notice yourself, stress response. Anything at all, anyone?
Paying bills.
Paying bills. So, when you pay a bill, is the actual, is putting the check in the envelope threatening? Are you going to get killed by the check going in the envelope? Is there any pain? I mean, real physical pain by putting the check. Is there any pain by putting the check in the mailbox? Or hitting the submit button? There's nothing. There's no pain in that moment. So what is the
Thinking about your other bills that you have to pay and your finances, and making sure you got enough money.
And sometime down the road, I'm going to run out. Is that a here and now, or is that a future thought? It's a future thought, right? And that's the way it is every time. Or it's a, man, I wish I wouldn't have said that. Oh, how could I have said that to that person? Man, I feel so off. Or, man, you jerk, you drove in front of me and I'm in a hurry. Right? Past. The solution to all of our stress, I mean, it is the one thing that I can say is inherent in everything else that I do, that I teach about, that I practice, that I work with people on, when I do one-on-one with people. Mindfulness is the centerpiece. It's like the hub around which everything else rolls. And so I want to share with you what I mean by mindfulness, and by the time we're done here, you'll go, I get it, that I can be peaceful now, regardless of what's going on. It's a really cool thing. And I think this is true. I think that this is the case for me. This is the case for tons of people with whom I work. If you can get this one concept of mindfulness, it can change virtually everything. Not just the so-called stressful things, but everything you do. Mindfulness is that powerful. And stress will go away too, which is a nice bonus. Okay, so let me start with two really, really important questions, and this is going to help answer your question. So the answer to the first question, where are you? What's the right answer all the time?
Here.
Right? You're always here. What else? I heard something.
I just said right here.
Right here. Are you ever not right here? I mean, physically, experientially. You said, what do you mean by experience? This is where we're going. So, experientially, you're always here. Where are you never? Somewhere else. When you're driving to the store, you're not at the store, you're driving in your car. And in your car, you're here. Now, I know some of you are thinking, this is stupid psychobabble, shut up. If you want to be peaceful, stay here. Stay with me, because this is just unbelievably powerful. So our here is, our direct experience is always we're here. Our unreality is I'm somewhere else besides here in my thoughts. Okay? Now, the next question that we can ask, where in time are you always? What's the right answer to that one? In the present, now. And I mean experientially. I know I can think about the basketball game that I'm going to be coaching my kids at later today. I can think about that, but I can't be at the basketball game when I'm here. I also can't be at the class I did this morning when I'm here. I can't be in my... Wouldn't it be... I don't know anyone who can go into their own future and pre-live it. Wouldn't that be great? You don't think so? I'll tell you what I would do. If I could go into my future and pre-live it, I would go to 1 year from now, find out which stock did the best, and I would come back to now and buy a truckload. I don't know anybody alive or who has ever lived who can do that. Richest guys on the planet, they still can't do that with the stock market. That tells me their experience is never anywhere but here. I can't go back and re-enjoy that meal I had yesterday. Right? I can only experience here, and I can only experience now, all the time. And that's the case for us from the moment we're born till the moment we die. I don't know anything about before, and I only know a little bit about after. But from the time that we're in this space-time continuum, this is our only reality, is moment-to-moment, here and now experience, as far as what we can experience directly. Does that make sense? Okay. This is a summary of what I just said. Never a time for you, me, and everyone else when it is not here and now. This is our reality. This is the only reality that any of us know. Okay. Now, here's the cool thing about this, and we'll start getting into the mechanism of mindfulness. For you and me and just about everyone else, except for those people in Mexico last week, and except for those people in Florida last week, and except for the people in Texas and Louisiana 2 weeks ago. So there are exceptions to this, but the exception is there were times in their lives when they were in danger, but for most all of us, 99.9% of the time, this is what it feels like. Whether we're in our car, we're at our house, we're at work, we're with our friends, there's no direct danger, coming at us. There's no threat. We don't live in a world where there are direct threats. Hardly ever. When there are, our body knows what to do. Stress response, go fast, be powerful. But when there aren't, we shouldn't have that turned on. Because we're not in danger 99.9% of the time. And the only reason that our stress response is designed to be part of us is to provide safety when we are in physical danger. That's the only reason why we have this stress response as part of us at all. So mindfulness says, okay, for the 99% of the time that I am not in danger, how do I get there? Rather than have my mind be focusing on what's not happening that I'm worrying about, or focusing on what's not happening that I'm angry about. And the way we do this is we can tune into our senses. I'm going to go into this just a little bit. Just a couple quick definitions of mindfulness. When I said at the beginning, what does mindfulness mean to you? These are a couple definitions that I really like. And it's exactly what some of you said. It means doing what you're doing when you're doing it to the exclusion of everything else. That sounds like the opposite of multitasking, doesn't it? Present moment awareness and the acceptance that here and now is your only reality. Mindfulness means showing up. And this is my favorite, by John Kabat-Zinn. He said, mindfulness involves intentionally doing one thing at a time and making sure I'm here for it. In other words, my awareness is focused on the very thing that I'm doing. Now, that I can hear you say, well, that sounds easy, but you have no idea how many stressors I have. You have no idea. I get so worried about my kids when they're out, on Friday or Saturday night, the football game is over and they're out. It's 1 o'clock in the, I have every right to be stressed. Or you know what I mean? We have, this sounds good on paper, and in real life it doesn't, it feels like, man, this doesn't work. I'm different. I remember I was giving this presentation to a group of women up near where I lived, and I was explaining this to them, and they just, there was one lady who stood up and she said, people don't think this way. You can't do this. And I didn't say this out loud, but I said, in my mind, I was thinking, man, you really want to be miserable. Because it's a choice. You can think about the future and the past that aren't happening, or you can focus on here and now. So this is how we do this. There's 4 primary mental characteristics that immediately move you into a state of mindful awareness. So there's 4 things that we do. And as we do these 4 things, you automatically bring your awareness to where you are. And it's not hard. And the reason why I know it's not hard is because when you were 4, this is what you did, without thinking about it. Any child, this is how they are, naturally. At some point in our lives, we decided it was more important to be stressed than happy. And so we adopted future past worry and get angry about things. So let's look at each one individually. Pay attention. That means just be here. Okay, so the first thing we do is we stop. I use one word for each of these so it's easy for me to remember. The first thing we do is we stop. Now, obviously, it doesn't mean you're walking and then you just, now I got to stay here. Oh, that doesn't feel very mindful. I've got to go somewhere. Mindfulness stopping means you have these looping films, so to speak. You have this endless mind chatter, like you kind of went like this, right? Which is very accurate how it feels. Our minds just keep going, and if it was anything emotional, if there was a lot of emotion things, then we run it through even more, and we add that emotion back in of what happened or what didn't happen or how we expected it to happen. Now, what was the first rule of the mind? Do you remember? What? Can only think of one thing at a time, and what was the second one? What? You can think of anything, exactly. You have a choice about what you think about. So, what I'm inviting us here to do is make a decision to push the stop button about all the things that aren't happening. Now, there's 4 things. This, you might think, well, that's impossible. I just can't get it out of my head. Well, when we get to the next ones, we'll figure out what to put in our head, because this feels hard. I can't just push the stop button. It just keeps running again. But we do have a choice. We do have some power to decide what it is that we allow. We are not our thoughts. We are having thoughts. And the reason I know that is because every one of us could directly choose to think something else. That means there's a chooser. Is that a word, chooser? Mm-hmm. Is that a real word, chooser? It works here. Okay, so stopping simply means you push the stop button on that which is focusing on future and past stuff. Okay, the next one. And that's where most people out there in the world, that's where they end. They say, just stop thinking about it and just be mindful. And that's where they end. But there's 3 more steps. There's 3 more things that you do that make it so that you are totally focused on the here and now. So the next thing we do in order to focus on here and now is we put our attention on our senses. In other words, what kind of data our senses are bringing into us. Now, why would that be a useful something? Having spent 32 minutes talking so far, why would putting our attention on our senses be useful? Why would you say, well, that makes sense that I would do that?
Because it brings you to the here and now.
How do you know?
Well, because how can you say, okay, I feel this table or I feel this chair if you're not here?
Exactly. Did you get that? You cannot feel yesterday's table. You cannot taste yesterday's. Your senses can only be here and now. You can never hear. You can make up things, sure, in your imagination, but as I watch that truck drive by and I notice it's white, and now it's not there, I'm no longer seeing it. My senses are always here and now. I know, it sounds like, well, that's too easy. Why would I focus on what I'm seeing? Why would I focus on what I'm hearing? And why would I focus on that? Well, you can only focus on how many things at a time? Only one, right? And if you're only focusing on what is happening right now, what are you not focusing on? Everything else that you're making up about that's turning on, because remember, your stress response, your hypothalamus, your pituitary gland, your endocrine system, they can't see what's going on out here. All they're doing is listening to your frontal lobes. And as your frontal lobes say, oh, geez, for any reason at all, it doesn't matter if it's real or not. Your frontal lobe says, oh, geez, your hypothalamus, your pituitary gland, your endocrine system, your nervous system, they're just listening for that. We're in danger. Okay, stress response. It doesn't matter if it's real or not, and 99% of the time it's not. So, if you put your attention back on, well, what am I noticing now? What am I seeing? 99% of the time, our present moment feels like this. Is there any threat happening here? Is there a threat here? Unless you're really put off by my voice, this is pretty good. I mean, this is how things are all the time. Even if you have an assignment that's due, some project that you have to do and you're late for, you're still not in danger. So being stressed about it is not going to help any for making the project get done more quickly. So we put our attention in the present moment by paying attention with our senses. And I love this this term or this phrase, notice what you notice. That invites us to really, really tune into whatever it is that our senses are bringing to us. Now, people in psychology tell us that we take in any moment, we take in about 1% of all the stimuli that's available to us. And I would say it's probably far less than that. Why? Because our minds are so filled up with... I see people walking around campus all the time, and you've been there. You see people, and they're like this. Oh, man. And they run into things, and they're just... And they're thinking they're being useful by being worried. I've got to be worried about something. I've got to be... have you walked, and I'm biased, I mean, I've been on every campus in the state. I have some connection, whether it's my kids or me going. Every campus, Weber State's one of the most gorgeous campuses of all time. And there's so many cool things to see when you walk around campus. If they would just go, wow, 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 how cool. There's bread over there. How many of you notice that there's bread over there? And these are really ticking me off because I want one. That looks so delicious until I can't eat it. But we miss out on that because we are thinking about stuff that's not happening, and it fills our mind with missing out on this. And so when we tune back into this, we start to go, wow, look at all the people, look at all the cool people, look, blondes, brunettes, no hair, gray hair, you know, you dial back into what is. And there's no stress in this because there's no perceived threat. So we can ask ourselves in any moment, what am I tasting now? What am I hearing now? What am I seeing now? What am I sensing? What internal sensations? And I submit to you, if you want to be connected to your intuition, you cannot be in a stressed mode and want insight from your intuition. The times when you have your greatest ideas and your greatest insights are not times when you're loading your mind with thoughts of what's not happening. I get more ideas in the shower. I bet some of you are like that, where you're taking a shower and nothing's going on and you're just kind of, oh, this is so great. Boom! Wow, that's an idea. And then as soon as you get out of the shower, you forget it. At least I do. Man, I wish I could have remembered. At school, somebody gave me a shower notepad. So you can write stuff down in the shower. It's the greatest gift anyone ever gave me. So we tune into this. We say to ourselves in any moment, I'm noticing. And then we just finish the sentence with whatever it is we observe. Now you might think, well, where does that get me? That doesn't help me with my paper. That doesn't help me with this presentation that's coming up. Actually, it does. Because what you're doing is you're getting yourself out of the stress response so your Einstein brain can think clearly. As soon as you go into the stress response, you're in lizard brain mode or Labrador brain mode, one or the other. You're not in Einstein brain mode. So we go here, and suddenly we're more clear, we're more able to think really, really clearly. I ask my students all the time, when you take tests, have any of you ever taken a test and you've studied and studied and studied all night long, and then you go in to take the test and your mind's just blank. Nothing in there makes sense. What happened? Einstein checked out. Lizard brain wants you to get the heck out of there, not think. So, as soon as we go to our senses, because here and now is always safe, stress response goes shoo, and everything goes back into balance. Third thing we do is we accept. Acceptance simply means saying yes to what is happening instead of being resisting it. So you notice things, so you stop your thinking, you look, sensory-wise, and then you say, yes, this is what's happening here and now. This is my present moment and I embrace it. I'm okay with it. This is how things are. Most of the reason why we want to do that, because we can't change anything about it anyway. Oh, it's a red light. Oh, it's snowing and it's September 22nd. man, that shouldn't be happening. Well, what's the problem with whenever we say that shouldn't be happening? What is the problem with that thought? Yeah, you do that, but it is happening, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's freezing outside this morning. Haven't turned how many of you have not turned your furnaces on? And you woke up and you were freezing cold, right? Well, that was your reality. And there's nothing wrong with going, oh man, this is cold and I got to get... But if you resist everything that is in your present moment, saying, no, this should not be this way. Stress response says, there must be some danger out there, because she's saying, no, this is bad. Okay, I'll turn on the stress response. So acceptance simply says, whatever you encounter as you are noticing, you embrace, you accept, you allow. You'd stop resisting, and we won't spend any time with resisting. That's an interesting, we could spend an hour on that right there. Okay, the last one, I think, yep, is what we call savoring. Whatever we focus on expands in our thinking. And savoring simply means that you let the enjoyment of whatever it is you're experiencing expand. You've probably had this experience 1,000 times. Everyone's had this experience, especially here in Utah. Have you ever been watching a sunset and you're just taking it in? Wow. You went maybe a little high on the hill and you were watching the sunset. Do you ever notice yourself going, no, this should not be happening, man? Or Mother Nature or God, whoever's in charge of these sunsets, you could have done better, right? Resisting. No. What happens when you are taking in the sunset and just going, holy cow? Do you have this? Is the stress response cranking? Not at all. Stress response goes, oh, no threat. And then you savor it, and then whatever it is that you're enjoying expands. You start to notice things you didn't notice before. The beauty of that color. That's why I love living here, because we were at a soccer game the other day, and my wife and I were watching our son play, and we looked, and it was that day just before all the rainstorm. What day was that? Friday? Saturday? Whatever it was. And we looked, it was a game in Layton, and we looked in the southwest, and there was a part of the sky that just looked like the most beautiful painting. And we always do this. My wife and I will always, look at that. And seriously, we just sat there. We forgot about the game momentarily, and we just went, oh my gosh. And that's there all the time. How many of you moms have, when you held your baby who's 1 month old, do you go, oh, this can be so hard for you. Oh, I wish you could only know. It's just going to be hell for you, and good luck getting through. What do you do when you're sitting there holding your baby? What thoughts are going on in your mind when you're sitting there holding your baby? I just made that up because I know nobody does that. What are the thoughts? Anybody? Yeah, it's like, and what are you thinking about? Your mind's, oh, look at the little face and the little hands, and you can feel the breath, and you can almost taste it for how close the child is, and you can hear the little sounds. And as you focus on it more and more and more, the joy of that moment just goes, right? And the feeling that we often have as we savor is one of, wow, this is so, thank you, this is so great. However, whatever made this happen, this moment, all I can think about is being grateful because this is so cool. Savoring. But we can't get there when our minds are focused on past and future. It only happens when we are, except for sometimes, I know sometimes we think, wow, Lake Powell, ooh, yeah. That's one of the coolest places in the world, yeah. But we can't experience it. We can't experience being in the water and looking up at the red rocks and the blue sky. We can't experience it, so it's different. It's still cool. And there's no stress response going to happen when we have that. But experiencing it directly is totally different. And we've all had that experience. We've all had that, where we just stop and in that moment we go, oh, this is so cool. I think that's why people do sports. I think that's why people do art. I think that's why people go hiking in the wood, in the mountains. I think that's why we have hobbies. I think that's why we have families, is because there are those times when we just are in the moment and we get that no stress and increase in the joy of that experience. Whether it's art or music or sports or whatever it is we're doing. But now, what I'm inviting you to do is be conscious of it. Because we don't really, we think we do, but nobody's ever really taught us to think this way all the time. But this is what I think we can do. And as we start to savor, we begin to recognize that things are fine as they are. And you still might be needing to change things, wanting to change things, but changing things are still part of it being fine. But the more you focus on them being fine, the more fine they get, like the sunset, like watching the bird fly across. We teach this to our kids, and I had noticed my son was playing goalie in the soccer game, and it was pretty funny. He was, he's down here on this end, and all the game's going on, and then suddenly this flock of ducks or geese, something, flew over, and you saw him just go. He's on a really good team. He's on a really, really good team, and the coaches were going. I could tell the coaches were going, Ben, get your head in the game. He's like, wow, that is so cool. Funniest thing ever. So this is how we savor. We accept. We enjoy. We seize the day. We seize the moment. We just yeah, this is it. Because this moment is the only moment you have. So why not? Why not? Instead of, oh no, I got to be ticked off at her, who's not here. Now, I love this analogy with roses. We've heard the term stop and smell the roses, right? That's kind of the go-to of stop and smell the roses. Well, I take this a little bit further. So how this looks with the four things: stop, look, accept, and savor. Stop means when you encounter the rose, cease thinking about other things than the rose. Because that's what is in your present moment, is the rose. The next is look. In other words, put your attention on the smell of the rose. Accept. Be okay that this rose is your current reality. Don't go, this should be a petunia. I don't want roses. No, the rose is your current reality. And then savor means enjoy the fragrance of the rose. You take it in. You smell it and you go, wow, that is a cool smell. See the difference? Stopping, and when they say stop and smell the roses, they forget, enjoy the rose. Okay, I smelled it. Now I got to get on to the next thing. Okay. Now there's lots of times when we can practice this. The cool thing is we can practice this doing everything, but a lot of things we do very mindlessly. In other words, we don't show up for it. Have you ever been driving on the freeway especially, and you've been driving maybe 10 minutes and you realize, man, I have no idea where I just went. That's the exact opposite of mindfulness. That's mindlessness. And you think, how did I not crash? I have no idea where I was. But there's all kinds of things we can do that help us that we can practice. I do this assignment in one of my classes. Did you take Mind Body Wellness? Where you did the mindful eating? Where you went to a restaurant? You still remember that? I tell them to go alone, no phone, to their favorite restaurant that serves their favorite food, and for an hour, without any phone or anything else to distract them, just be with the food for an hour. And two or three really interesting things happen. All of them, to a person, say, I had no idea how delicious that food was. But the other cool thing, and I think this is good for us who are in health, is almost to a person they say, I ate less than I normally would. I realized, man, I was full. Instead of mindlessly eating, and suddenly we're just stuffed. And we have a hard time walking out of the restaurant. They'll say, man, I had half of what I normally would eat, and I was so satisfied. You get in a shower, and you just think, whatever. Sometimes just get in the shower and just go, wow, how cool it is that we have hot water. Nobody else in history has had what we have. A shower of hot water relaxing our shoulders. I mean, how cool is that? Driving, talking with someone. Have you ever been with somebody and you know they're not there? Don't you just love that, having that conversation with somebody? It's the most horrible conversation. Especially when they're checking their phone, when I'm talking to somebody, and suddenly they're on their phone, I just want to leave. Okay, you're not with me anymore, fine. It's no problem. I mean, I'm not angry. Just, I'm going to go somewhere else. The reason why people struggle at all falling asleep is because their minds are future and past. Get yourself into the present, boom, you'll fall asleep. And how do you do that? You tune in, you stop, you look, you accept, savor. Oh, this pillow feels so great. Holy cow, I can't believe how good this bed feels. Zonk. Instead of, I got 17 things to do tomorrow, and 15 things to do today, and I only did 4, so that means I have 39 things to do tomorrow. Right? That's what we do. And the body thinks you're still, when you're thinking those thoughts, your body thinks, okay, I guess you should be doing something because you're telling me all the things I should be doing, which is not compatible with sleeping. Sports, artistic, I mean, you can apply it to everything. And this is my kind of summary, and then I'll give you 2 quick quotes. The truth is, if you incorporate a mindset of mindfulness into everything you did, everything would be more fun, enjoyable, peaceful, and satisfying. I really believe this is the solution to all the misery that we have going on with ourselves. We're so dissatisfied with how things aren't, and we stop focusing on how things are and enjoying, because it's pretty good. It's really pretty good how things are. Do these things, watch your stress disappear. 2 quick quotes, and I love these. I'm not the only one. I didn't invent this or anything, but many people have written about this, and I love this one by Thoreau. He says, you must live in the present, launch yourself on every wave, find your eternity in each moment. Fools stand on their island opportunities and look toward another land. There is no other land, there is no other life but this. What I hear him saying is, there is no other moment but this one. So enjoy it. So be with that one. This one from Thich Nhat Hanh, who's a Buddhist monk, writer on mindfulness. He said, I enjoy taking my time with each dish, being fully aware of the dish, the water, and each movement of my hands. I know that if I hurry in order to go and have dessert, the time will be unpleasant, not worth living. That would be a pity, for each minute, each second of life is a miracle. The dishes themselves and the fact that I'm here washing them are miracles. He says, if I am incapable of washing dishes joyfully, if I want to finish them quickly so I can go and have dessert, and pay attention, this is the heart of it all. He said, I will be equally incapable of enjoying my dessert. With the fork in my hands, I'll be thinking about what to do next, and the texture and the flavor of the dessert, together with the pleasure of eating it, will be lost. I will always be dragged in the future, never able to live in the present moment. And then this last one by Alan Watts. And this is as good as any I've ever read. He said, no one imagines that a symphony is supposed to improve in quality as it goes along, or that the whole object of playing is to reach the finale. The point of music is discovered in every moment of playing and listening to it. It is the same, I feel, with the greater part of our lives, and if we are unduly absorbed in improving them, and I would add, or getting to the next one, we may forget altogether to live them. Do you get the sense of what these three writers are telling us? This is where life happens. This is where the joy of life happens. This is where the thrust of life happens. This is where the fun of life, this is where the hardness of life happens. Doesn't mean anything's going to be more simple, but if you can do everything you do without stress, wouldn't that be great? So, why was eating his yogurt the best advice I could give Philip? Because that's all he had in that moment. You might as well enjoy it, right? So, don't take my word for this. Go and experiment. When you're driving home today, rather than thinking about what's not happening, drive and be there. And then when you're at your house, be there. And when you're at the meeting you got tonight, be there. And watch how things happen differently with your feeling with yourself. It's absolutely amazing. Any questions? Thoughts? No questions or thoughts? I think that's the last slide. So we must be done. Anything else? Well, I've appreciated being with you. Thank you very much.